let's pump the brakes on a Bloodline Civil War at Survivor Series. Let's pump the brakes.
Okay.
Because something happened last night that I feel like Triple H was kind of like, let me sprinkle this in here and let's see what we can do with it. And that was the insertion of Ivy Nile with American Made.
Interesting.
Now, I want to pay attention to that because I feel like there could be a scenario where we get the Wyatt Six versus American Made at Survivor Series in War Games. And the reason I say that is because a War Games match caters to the Wyatt Six faction more than it does to the Bloodline situation.
Okay.
Now, it's interesting because the way I looked at it was you bring Ivy Nile in because you need somebody for Nikki Cross to fight with. And now you have the Creed brothers and you have Chad Gable, which kind of offset Eric Rowan, Dexter Lumis, and Joe Gacy. Now, the question will be, is that what we would possibly get as a whole at Survivor Series? Or would we also insert Uncle Howdy, which then would question, does there another member that's going to join American Made as we go in time? Because Chad Gable even left the hint last night on his little promo package. Hey, I'm looking to, recruit, and I'm looking to make this thing, something serious. So I feel like everybody wants the Civil War at Survivor Series, but I feel like Triple H was like, hey, let's pump the brakes here. That might not be where we're going with this. So I think that's my first hot take for the night.
Interesting. I don't know how I feel about that, Mike. I don't know.
Yeah.
So all of these things, everybody says, y'all tried to lead me in different directions. The one thing I will say is the whole pump the brakes on the Bloodline thing, the Bloodline's where the money is.
Oh, yeah. Oh, 100%.
The poster sells the event itself. I don't know if American Made, and I'm a big American Made fan at this point. Love Chad Gable, love the Creeds. Ivy Nile's good. I just don't know if that sells the event in the same way that a Bloodline Civil War sells the event. And the way I look at it is we have a limited amount of dates in the run up to WrestleMania. We're turning the corner here, right? Mm-hmm. We're looking at like major premium live events. Roman's probably not going to Crown Jewel, right? So the reality is you've got Bad Blood, you've got War Games, then you're going to have the Rumble, and that's really your big three that you've got to set up Roman Reigns, because ultimately the end goal is The Rock, right? That's where we're headed. And so I think you've got to start distributing pieces here pretty soon. I think that what we heard on Monday Night Raw last night with Adam Pearce on the phone, I think he's working a trade to get Jey Uso and Sammy back on SmackDown. Okay. He was saying those two get the deal done. I want it done by tonight. I feel like there's works for that. I just, in the limited time we have, there's story beats that have to be hit. We can't just go into January for Royal Rumble and go, all right, Rock's back. It's time for Rock and Roman. This thing has to be orchestrated correctly to hit those beats to me. I'm not against American Made versus the Wyatt Six. I just don't think on poster, on paper, that match sells the event in the way that the Bloodline Civil War begins to sell that event. Because the beats we have to hit probably are, we're going to get a Roman and Solo match at some point. Okay?
Yes.
And I don't know if that comes before or after the big group match, but I think at some point, I still stand behind the story I predicted a couple months ago, still what I believe is going to happen. The Rock is going to get involved at Survivor Series. Okay. I think he's going to be part of Team Roman. I think that it's going to be Roman, Rock, Jimmy, and Jay. Okay. Versus Solo, Tama Tonga, Jacob, and whatever the other Tongaloa. Those four. Okay. And The Rock, it comes down to The Rock, Roman, and Solo as the last three. And Rock turns on Roman in that match. Solo gets the pin. and Solo hands the Uma Fala or whatever to The Rock, and that begins this like he was behind it the whole time, which then once again unevens the numbers and gives room for someone like Sammy to come back and become a part of that. I think The Rock comes back in a semi babyface situation with Roman, and then returns back to his heel persona. But to me, Mike, I like where you're going. I think for Chad Gable, that's a great story. I just help me make sense of the story beats up till WrestleMania if we're not doing the War Games match.
Well, I think you have to kind of you gotta look back to the Raw after Mania, and The Rock basically saying, "I'm coming for Cody." I think that's where we have to kind of circle this thing with The Rock, and I think for me, I'm trying to break it down in terms of like timing and when things are going to happen. What I guess for me makes more sense is that The Rock doesn't return to the Royal Rumble, right? And that's where he inserts his name because that's how he's going to get Cody, right? And I think at that point, you can get like a Roman interference maybe. Something's going to happen between now and January that's going to kind of heat this thing up between Roman and The Rock. I don't know what it's going to be. I don't know that I see Rock at Survivor Series. I don't know about that quite yet.
Where is Survivor Series though?
It's in Canada.
Yeah, that
I could see the situation where you get a team Roman versus a team Solo without The Rock. I could see that because when you really think about it, Bash in Berlin, that's not going to have any bloodline involvement. I think Bad Blood is where you're going to kind of think of, okay, this is probably going to be the first match of some sort between a Roman side and a Solo side. And that's October.
Yeah.
And then the next month is November, which you get Survivor Series. December, I don't know what's going on. And then you're back in WrestleMania season already in January. So I guess that's kind of where I'm like, all right, this insertion of Ivy Nile is interesting because Chad Gable's still locked in on the White Six, and the insertion of Ivy Nile makes sense because Nikki Cross needs somebody to go against. And I guess that's kind of where my take.
That's very forward thinking. I could see what you're doing because to me it was literally just to get her to turn on Maxine, and because she hadn't quite made the turn for the Creeds, the Creeds turned, Chad turned, but we never saw Ivy. I felt like that story was just set up to kind of like complete the run and go, well, she turned as well.
Sure.
And to, turning her on Maxine gets her credible heat. Yeah, that's interesting because when I think, still in my head, I go Bad Blood, we do Solo versus Roman. And we have it end with this new bloodline beating Roman Reigns up. That leads to the return of Jay and Jimmy. And to me, that sets up perfectly for Survivor Series. I don't know. I'm gonna hold on to hope there. I'm definitely. Sure. I think that's a hot take. You saying that instead of a bloodline, we go American made, and I'm big American made. Let me roll into my first hot take then, because it plays off of what you say, and this was actually the one I have second, but I'm gonna roll it first now to run into what you did here. I think Mike